late John McAfee did a tweet a couple years ago and said, for those of you with the Tor browser, you can see it right here, meet one of my underground teams. I got some juicy info on the government. Now, McAfee was notorious for exposing things, leaking things on the government. He wasn't quite Edward Snowden. He wasn't quite Julian Assange, but he definitely would go down the literal and proverbial rabbit hole. Now, some people said he was suicided. Some people said he was suicidal. Really, the mystery continues. But let's get into Operation FBI and CIA. Do they really own Tor? All right, so there's a lot that goes into this, and we're going to break it down today. A lot of prominent people like McAfee himself, like Elon Musk, and so many others have talked about how the majority of the internet, the majority of the web is the deep dark web. We've done some videos here, but frankly, we put more of our exclusive content on Privacy X Project free, but it gets censored whenever we put it on a platform. I've recently had several videos deleted and age restricted, which is insane because I don't even swear in my videos, and I've had a few taken down, and of course I'm demonetized left and right. So we're putting more stuff at Privacy X Project because the internet doesn't like the truth. They like fluffy clouds and Saturdays and fairy tales, which is fine, but unfortunately the reality exists. Now, when we get into Tor and these things, I've done videos on how to buy Bitcoin anonymously on Tor. I've done videos on how to be anonymous on Tor. I've done videos on how to be a ghost. In a Privacy X Project, we teach people how to be a ghost, how to hide assets, how to make ghost businesses, how to build a ghost lifestyle. Privacy is a right, and it's a right that needs to be protected. And if you don't protect it, and I don't protect it, you can bet your bottom dollar that the government will not allow you to have privacy. They'll do everything they can to get away from privacy, anonymity, security, and basically just owning the people. It's not for the people, it's the government to own the people. And a lot of people say Tor is no different. Well, Tor has a interesting past because a lot of people know it's government affiliated, government created. A lot of journalists use it, a lot of people use it on the dark web. It isn't so much Tor itself, it's the creation, right? It's the functionality. So the fact that you bounce from different, different locations and end up with different exit nodes is really what helps. So a lot of people structure, and again, we've shown this, I'll use like a virtual machine with Unix or a different flavor of Linux. You get on a VPN, you get onto Tor, you reroute through Tor, and then you end up pretty anonymous and pretty secure. Now at a base level, that's more secure than most things. And even if it was controlled, basically what a lot of people are saying is the exit nodes are all controlled, and then the CIA, NSA, FBI, etc. backwork. Now, in all fairness, when it comes to conspiracy theorists, it's really easy to throw the blanket of conspiracy theories over everything. Literally anything that exists. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a realist, and I'm always looking for the reality of the situation. There's always people who are way too optimistic, way too pessimistic, and I fall kind of in the middle. I'm digging for the truth. I'm digging for reality, where I always find myself. I wish things were rosy and sunshine. I mean, the best thing for me is if things were so good that channels like mine were obsolete. I would gladly retire tomorrow. But unfortunately, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse throughout my 30-something years. And I don't see it getting any better. I just keep seeing it worse. So make no mistake, I would gladly retire tomorrow and do something else. I'm a talented guy and I'm an entrepreneur. I'll pivot into something else tomorrow. But the reason Privacy X is growing, the reason so many people have interest, the reason our website and people working with us is getting bigger and bigger and bigger is because the government keeps suppressing people and pressing down on people. And it's not a Democrat or Republican or independent thing. It's the structure thing. And so when we look at Tor, when we look at other services like Tor, when we look at things for privacy and anonymity, most conspiracy theorists just throw a random blanket like it's all government. Everything is government. Now, here's the weird thing. Eitherwise, the government is the most talented, most incredibly gifted people on earth, or they're a bunch of dummies, okay? You can't really have it both ways. Well, unfortunately, you can. And I've talked about this in the past. There are certain segments of government that are really smart, and there's the majority of it that is dumb, and it literally rips itself apart. The good thing about America is everything is compartmentalized. And as a privacy advocate, I talk a lot about compartmentalization. Well, the great thing about America is the president has rights and powers, but every state has rights and powers, the governors, the mayors, the law enforcement, the military, right? So you've got all these things and everyone vying to have as much power as they can. That actually helps the people in a lot of ways because there's not one absolute blanket power, blanket law. That's why in America, you're like, we're one country, we're 50 states plus some other territories, and you've got massively different laws from what you can do to what you can own to how you can live to how you're taxed in every single state. So if you look at a thing like Tor, and how this comes full circle is if you look at a platform or a project like Tor, the Tor project, how does this be controlled by the government if the whole fundamental nature of this is open source? The amount of infiltration the government would have in all of Tor would be ridiculous. And to think that they are that embedded into a project like this, I think is a little far-fetched. Now, has the government used some of their resources to embed into things like this and catch people? Yeah, but I mean, even if you look at Silk Road and how that story went down, you would have thought they wouldn't have got 1/10 of as far as they did if the government had any resources or any infrastructure in the deep web the way people claim they do. Also, there's a lot of things that have happened in America where if the government was as talented and all-seeing and all-knowing as they claim to be, or as conspiracy theorists claim that they are, some of this stuff wouldn't happen. So I don't in any way believe that Tor is owned completely by the FBI, CIA, that they're controlled by it. However, that said, if you look at the evidence, you look at the way things have shaped up, you look at the laws that the government has started to make for privacy, for anonymity, you look at the CTA, the Corporate Transparency Act, which we did some videos on that. You look at how the current administration is trying to suppress cryptocurrency. You look at how the current administration is trying to suppress a lot of privacies and rights. And it's happened in virtually every administration in my lifetime. Since the 80s, we've seen this. And I'm only talking in my lifetime. It's happened really forever, but it's happening again and again and again. And if you look at this, you look at how things are shaping up, you look at how things are moving forward, this is becoming a dreadful issue. And one of the things I've been looking at with Tor is, first of all, is it open source? Okay, so how could they penetrate it? So you kind of have to backward it and think like a pen tester. And I've got a handful of friends who are in the pen testing industry. In Vegas, there's a ton of pen testers. Of course, we have DevCon. We have a bunch of hacker conventions and conferences. So you see a lot of those people circulate around here in Vegas. In fact, the famous Kevin Mitnick is here in Vegas. He's actually right down the road. I've met him a couple of times. Nice guy, very reclusive, very, I wouldn't say antisocial, but you could tell he's got different modes, which I can relate with. I'm the same way. But the reality is, you look at the ecosystem and what some of the experts, the quote unquote experts, have said about Tor, and you find kind of similar to scientists, right? You have two camps. You have people who think it's not possible, and you have people who think there is no freedom on Tor. So it's a really interesting thing. Now, my stance has always been, don't put anything on the internet that you don't want made public. And that goes with your emails, that goes everything. Now, it'd be nice to keep your emails and texts and private communications private, but the reality is, unless you have your own internal system like an Ethernet, that's why, an Ethernet connection, but an intranet, that's why most big corporations have an internal communication system that is not internet-based. All big corporations have that, so they're not on the open web, because even if you use, any email servers, it's open. Any text, any digital communication. And I know some services like ProtonMail and Tutanota and Signal and some of these companies talk about end-to-end encryption. The problem is it's misleading in a lot of ways. And in my ProtonMail video, I broke down exactly how ProtonMail is not as secure as they claim. Now, it's better than most, certainly better than using some worthless program like Gmail or Yahoo or something ridiculous. I get people email me all the time. It's like, why do you have a Yahoo? If you got Gmail, it's not private, but at least it's a legit, who still uses MSN? Somebody emailed me the other day from AT&T. I won't even respond. First, I thought you were from AT&T. Then I realized, no, this person uses an AT&T email. I didn't even know that was still a thing. Like, try to get at least a legit, even if you're not willing. And Proton Mail has you can do a free account, but the paid account is worth it. Same with TootNota, same with a handful of other emails. I've done breakdowns on the top emails you can use. I've also got a list at privacyxproject.com. But the fact is, when you're going down this road, privacy and anonymity is key. Tor being open source and being secure is key. And there's these two decisive camps. It is or it isn't. Unfortunately, I don't fall in either of those camps. I think that the FBI and the CIA have tried to monitor what they can, but the reality is controlling an open source program is not really possible because the amount of infrastructure and resources would be so big, and even with our overblown inflated budgets, cyber crimes is huge, but it's not big enough to warrant the amount of itemized expenditures you would have to literally own a program. Because the thing is, Tor has exploded in the last 3 years. Exploded, which is great. So many privacy and technology and security channels on YouTube, on Odyssey, and on other platforms have really helped this movement, right? Privacy X, we're a little voice doing our thing, and there's so many other little voices that add up to a big voice and a big movement, and Tor has exploded. So for them to have enough resources to try to track the millions and millions and millions of people flowing through Tor is just unrealistic. Now, do they try? Probably, but again, where the government fails consistently is they're really good at bringing in ungodly amounts of data. They're really bad at sifting through it and making sense of it. And we've seen this sadly with, kind of terrorist type of attacks on American soil, or even things like here in Las Vegas, the unfortunate event that happened back in 2017 with the Las Vegas shooting. There was a million signs, there was all the cameras, all the security, everything was there, but nobody knew, because when you're tracking everyone, you're really tracking no one. And instead of the government focusing on the highest probable targets, they decided years ago after 9/11 to focus on everyone. And the problem with focusing on everyone is you're not really tracking anyone in a meaningful manner. So do I think the government tracks all of us? Sure. But at a certain point, it's kind of like the no-fly list. If you put everyone on the no-fly list, all you've accomplished was putting airlines out of business, right? It's finding that balance, and the government is really bad at finding a balance. And this is why I know that it doesn't completely own and track everything on Tor, because the government really doesn't have that capability. They have the capability to track it to a certain degree, although it would take massive resources. The federal government prints money so they could do it, but they don't have the capability to sift it into something usable. I mean, the government has literally found information on prominent threats years later because they had so much information and so much data, and they had to appoint task force just to go through mountains of data, and then 3 years later they figure, oh, we knew all about it all along. We just had no clue because we're busy tracking 350 Americans. I mean, they're tracking children, they're tracking everything. So the amount of data is ridiculous. So it's kind of like that hidden in plain sight. The best thing you could do on Tor is use the stock settings, not adjust things, screen resolution, not adjust all the different, plugins and add-ons. Don't do any of that. Use stock settings, VPN, so you've kind of masked everything through an encrypted tunnel. If you have a VPN router, that's a good option. Then you use a virtual machine like I showed you how to do. Then you funnel things through Tor, and then you use the stock Tor. Of course, you never log in to any account on Tor, ever. And then you can't really be fingerprinted. It's really hard to fingerprint you if you use it the way I've showed you how to use it. So even if the government is trying, it's going to be almost impossible. And then what are they really getting? And as millions and millions more people use Tor consistently, it's making it so much harder to fingerprint anybody, because if they're all doing it the same thing, it's kind of like the theory of anonymous, right? if we all walk in the street right now and there's 1,000 of us, or there's 100,000 of us, or there's 1,000,000 of us, we're all going to look like individuals because we are. But if we're all wearing the exact same mask, maybe some of you guys are 5'6", I'm 6'2", maybe some people are 6'7", maybe some people are 5'8", but the reality is we're all going to look the same, roughly the same. We wear a black hoodie, we wear black pants and black shoes with the same mask, a white anonymous mask. We're all going to look roughly the same. We are, right? And that's Tor, to all look roughly the same. That's what helps you out. So if you're using something like Tor, and the thing of it being open source is it makes it really hard to embed. Everyone talks about how Tor has trackers. I would be more worried about Apple. Bill Gates has all but come out and said it's his duty to track people. Bill Gates is a scumbag and the scum of the earth. But even like Apple, and there's even Linux machines that could be questionable. I'm talking about the machines. You look at laptops, you look at PC style, Asus, Acer, Dell, you look at all the different companies, that's just to name a couple. I would be more worried about the hardware. I mean, there's been people who've complained about Raspberry Pi. Now, Raspberry Pi is pretty cool. And again, when you're looking at something open source, you can get to the root of any problem and you can make things interchangeable. That's why I talk about the modular phone, the modular computer. That's why I'm such a big fan of Linux computers, because you can swap things out, but your operating system is open source. Unlike Windows, where it's garbage. It's freaking Windows, which is the most worthless platform on earth. So Linux is number one. Apple's got some security benefits, provided you really change things around, and we've done some videos on that. There's some benefits to using Apple for business only, but I would never use Apple for any, really in-depth personal stuff, because it is closed source, and even the hardware is closed source. Now, the one good thing about everything working in unison with Apple is everything works so good you don't have to worry about as many viruses and issues, and your system is just going to work. I will give Apple credit on that. But from a privacy standpoint, Apple fails miserably, consistently. So it comes down to finding what works for you. In my opinion, and that's all it is, opinion, I don't think Tor is owned or operated completely by the FBI or the government, because they just don't have the ability to be able to implant that many people to do this. And let's say it was, provided we're all using it the same, provided we're all using the ghost theory, can they fingerprint you? Yeah, at a certain level, but it's going to be so intensive and it's going to take so much work, so many resources for so little effort that even the federal government really is not willing to play ball. So that's my take on it. Let me know your take on it down below. Appreciate you checking out this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're always putting out new videos here on Privacy X. Have an amazing day. Go all in, and I'll see you in the next video.